Morning.
Okay, good morning, everybody. You're very welcome to our virtual coffee morning. My name is Kevin Purcell. I'm a journalist based in Brussels, and I'm your moderator this morning. Now, we're speaking about a serious issue, and our discussion this morning, I think, will be both interesting and educational. Can I just remind anyone who's joined to mute yourself just so we can see the video clearly? Now, breast cancer, unfortunately, is still the most common type of cancer in women in the EU and the one that causes the most deaths. Europe has a plan to beat cancer, and work is underway in both the Commission and the Parliament to do so. We'll be hearing from politicians, NGOs, patient ambassadors, and those working on the front line. So I'd like to introduce our speakers now. Our co-hosts this morning are Cindy Franson, MEP, and DPP Group Coordinator on the Special Committee on Beating Cancer, and Francis Fitzgerald, MEP and EPP Group Coordinator on the Committee on Women's Rights and Gender Equality. Our special guest is the European Commissioner for Health and Food Safety, Stella Kyriakides. Our panelist, Sarah Carey, writer, broadcaster and communications consultant, Dr. Susan O'Flanagan, senior clinical psychologist in St Vincent University Hospital in Dublin, patient ambassadors Roisin Dunn and Mairead O'Sullivan, Barbara Klein, communications officer with Europa Donna, and Helen Forrestal, Director of Nursing Services at the Marie Keating Foundation. So just to explain the format a little bit, the session is divided into two different themes. The first is equal access to care. What can the EU do? The second is breast cancer isn't pink. And Helen will be looking at mental health in that section in the second half. So we'll get going, but before we do have a number of other MEPs in our audience, and feel free to jump in during the Q&A session at the end of each half. So I'll get going. I know the Commissioner might not be able to stay for the entirety of the session, so I will invite her to speak now. Commissioner, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Honourable members, dear friends, I would like to say it's really a great pleasure to be able to join this coffee morning, even in a virtual way, and to be discussing such an important issue such as cancer and, of course, breast cancer, being the International Breast Cancer Awareness Month. I want to start by saying how important the exchanges I've been able to have over the past 2 months with stakeholders have been in building up the Europe's Beating Cancer Plan. It has been a particularly challenging time for everyone. It still is a challenging time for everyone. Building up this plan has really remained a priority to the European Commission, and we hope to be presenting it at the end of this year. We are strongly committed to work towards the objectives of this plan, which I'd like to share a little bit with you today in this brief intervention. I'd also like to say that I'm really very looking forward to my first meeting with the European Parliament Special Committee on Cancer tomorrow, because I believe that in order to make a difference with cancer, any type of cancer, we need to work on partnerships, and partnerships really have to be the center point. Nobody can do this alone. I want to share some thoughts with you on the Europe-speaking cancer plan, and also bring it also in relation to COVID-19 and the pandemic. Uh, I am very aware that this pandemic has really created very difficult situations for many patient groups, and of course, cancer patients and breast cancer, women with breast cancer, women trying to access screening services have been really heavily impacted. I was interested in the second part of the session saying that breast cancer isn't always pink. Pink is a color, but it's also an attitude, and I think it has been a very difficult time for breast cancer patients over the last 10 months, and the ongoing nature of this pandemic is putting added stress and anxiety. So with the Europe-speaking cancer plan, we want to do a great deal more in the areas of prevention of cancer, in the areas of detection and early diagnosis, and this is crucial, in the areas of treatment, improving access to treatments, and in better care and support for those who are living with breast cancer. It's very important to have this holistic approach and to tackle with specific actions every single step of the cancer patient's journey. It is an essential part to support a sustainable recovery from COVID-19. And this is why I'm already highlighting to Ministers of Health the importance of looking at how cancer patients are accessing screening and treatment programs and have access to medicines and follow-up in the COVID-19 pandemic. So for ourselves, there has never been a more relevant time for this plan or a more important opportunity to look at cancer and tackle it in a very positive way. The Europe-speaking cancer plan will be running in parallel with a number of other future initiatives, all designed to improve cancer outcomes. As you know, we put forward a very ambitious EU for Health program, following the Council's decision, government's decision to substantially reduce the budget. I want to say here that it's still 4 times more than we have ever had for a standalone health program in the EU, and a significant amount of that will be devoted to the implementation of the Europe-speaking cancer plan. So we are really, this is a priority for this Commission, and we're moving ahead with all the actions that we'll be putting forward at the end of this year. The Horizon Europe Cancer Mission will be improving our evidence base in order to develop better policies, because as we all know, we need to have research-based actions. For myself, for ourselves, what is important is that through this plan we tackle the many inequalities that we know exist across but also within member states. Anyone diagnosed with cancer, any woman or man diagnosed with breast cancer should have equal opportunities for optimal diagnosis and care. And this implies equal access to screening and diagnostics, care and support, to psychosocial care, to palliative care, to have access to new medicines and treatment. Cancer outcomes need to be determined by science and by policies which are in place, and not by luck or by the draw of the lottery. It's a priority for this Commission, as I have said. As many of you know, and I'm happy and really to see many good friends in this court. As many of you know, this is also very much a personal priority for myself. I'm a breast cancer patient. I can understand the challenges that are faced, and together with President von der Leyen, who has really made it her own priority, we are pushing ahead with this plan this year. After it's adopted, that's the first step. Then it's all our collective responsibility through our partnership to ensure its success, to ensure its implementation. And for that reason, I really look forward to working with you and making a difference in changing the face of a disease that affects so many hundreds of thousands of European citizens and their families. Again, thank you for the opportunity to be here. I'll stay in the meeting as long as my schedule today allows. But there are other members of my team who are also in the meeting, and they'll be able to feedback me on anything discussed. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Commissioner, and thanks for taking the time to speak to us this morning. We do appreciate it. That's the view from the Commission. Now, maybe to pick up on some of the points raised there and perhaps explain a little bit about what's happening in the European
I want to thank you for giving me the floor. I would first of all like to thank Commissioner Kyriakides for her very inspiring and positive words. After having listened with great attention, I am very hopeful that we will be able to work very closely together with the BECA committee and that we will strive to improve the lives of so many women and also men, as you mentioned, in the coming years. Unfortunately, we see indeed that there are still disparities within member states with regard to screening, with regards to access to treatment and differences in survival rates. And the main question we need to ask ourselves is the one on added value. What can we do at European level to change the lives of patients, also their families and the caregivers? And I start with screening. We can see that the screening rates for breast cancer are very different across the EU. Differences between member states, for example, in 2018, screening figures for women between the age of 50 and 69 went from 21% in Bulgaria to 84% in Finland. In my opinion, we shouldn't start pointing fingers to any individual country. That this doesn't help anyone. But we just need to listen to each other and learn from each other. The European added value here is quite obvious. The EU can and should take the lead to bring member states closer together. On screening, there is a second problem I would really like to mention. Next to the geographical gap, we should focus on reaching all groups in screening programs. Evidence shows we simply don't reach everyone we need to reach. For example, low educated women or women in poverty, we do not only need to spread the word on the existence of such programs, but also make sure that all women participate. They often don't participate because they're afraid of the results, because they won't be able to pay for the required treatment. And this leads us to the social health gap, another issue we will have to solve. And in doing so, we should also embrace new technologies, artificial intelligence, which offers many new possibilities for detecting cancers at an earlier stage and for more accurate, rapid and personalized treatment. This brings us seamlessly to the next point: access to treatment and care. When we talk about access to treatment, we talk amongst others about access to radiotherapy and cancer medicines. Radiotherapy is of huge importance of clinical outcomes. There remains a large gap between how it is currently used and in its effectiveness. We, for example, need more high quality equipment. This means investments. Early detection is one thing, best therapy is another, and this proves once more that the holistic approach is recommended as we do it in the BECA committee. And then the access to cancer medicines, shortage of oncology medicines pose a severe threat. For this reason, the expected pharmaceutical strategy of the European Commission will be of utmost importance. We need framework to improve notification of the shortages and an early warning system. We must enhance the transparency, traceability and security of the medicine supply chain, and the accessibility and affordability of medicines and treatments is key for all our patients. And I already raised the two main aspects of trying to improve chances of surviving breast cancer: early detection by better screening and swift access to the right treatment. But we should not stop at the moment the treatment is done. Aftercare is very important also, the survivorship. Think about the psychological aspects of breast cancer. Unfortunately, amputation is sometimes needed. We shouldn't neglect the psychological consequences of this. Aftercare is not only important for patients but also for their family, their direct environment. We cannot forget about them. So I'm very hopeful after having listened to Commissioner Kyriakides to hear that disparities in screening, access to care, and differences in the survival rates between the member states will be within the priorities of the EU Beating Cancer Plan. And the Commissioner can count on us, the EPP members and the BECA committee, but also the entire PP group, to work together on this. Only by pooling our efforts, we can make the future better for breast cancer patients and for the prevention of this terrible disease. So let us do this every day of the year, and I thank you very much.
Thank you, Cindy. Now, another MEP who's done a lot of work in this area prior to and since being elected to the European Parliament is Frances Fitzgerald. I'll hand you over to Frances now.
Good morning, everybody, and happy morning. Lovely to see so many people on this call, and Commissioner, of course, you're an absolutely key person when it comes to moving the EU forward on cancer, and great that you could join us this morning. And so many of my colleagues are here. I see Maria, Alba, I see Deirdre, Stella, and many others. And I think that's a sign of the commitment and interest in the European Parliament to making sure that beating cancer is central to our work, and that we use every mechanism we have within the Parliament, within the Commission, to work on this issue. I've worked with Marie Keating, who are on this call, where we've done a lot of work in reaching out to disadvantaged, perhaps more vulnerable, marginalised women over the years. It's extremely important across Europe. I think the Commissioner will agree that we do this. Also, we have Europa Donna. And I suppose when I first got involved with Europa Donna, and Stella herself was involved for many years, what really struck me as fantastic, and putting my political hat on and seeing what was being done, was that what you had was this fantastic combination of researchers, of doctors, of people who've been affected directly with patients, researchers all working together. My absolute belief is that if we have in breast cancer a fantastic model of work, actually, I think we can teach some of the other, areas of medicine quite a lot for the way that the attitudes have developed within the breast cancer community, if I may call it that, in terms of working across disciplines and bringing the best knowledge together, listening to the advocates, working with the researchers, the doctors. And just recently, I worked with the Transforming Breast Cancer Initiative, of which I'm chair. We had a session, and it was really interesting to see that very rich dialogue going on. And I think at its best, that's what the Commission and the Parliament can do. It can bring all of those groups together to make sure we work out what are the current issues, the challenging issues, and the pathways forward. And it seems to me that obviously COVID is an entirely new challenge, and the lens through which we see everything in the Parliament now really has to be COVID. It's digital as well, it's climate and equality, but COVID is the big challenge. And in relation to medicine and accessing care, it's to really get across the information education piece about do continuing your screening, do talk to your GP if you have a symptom. And it's great to see people like Sarah and Kevin from the world of the media here, because we've got to get those messages out in an ongoing way. It's really critical. A couple of points. Cindy has covered quite a lot, as has the Commissioner, but a couple of thoughts that have really, if you like, inspired me in my recent contacts in relation to the pathway forward. It's a bit like gender equality. It never stops. You've got to continue. People are at different stages. You've got to continue the work. New challenges arise. COVID is the big challenge at the moment. But equally, when you start looking across the European Union, I'm actually very shocked at some of the statistics. When I heard that there are 9 countries without an accredited breast cancer centre, I mean, that really makes you an accredited cancer care centre. That really makes you think about the differentials across the European Union, the very different opportunities that women and men with breast cancer have to access high quality care, high quality treatment. When you look at advanced breast cancer, you see that the stigma is very strong there. Now, I've listened to papers on doing away with the stigma of advanced breast cancer. Now, does anybody think there's still a stigma? Apparently there is. It's still there. And two interesting concepts that I came across that will be well known to the community who work on this. One is the right to be forgotten, and that's quite interesting because we spend a lot of time talking about we have to remember. But from an employment perspective, perhaps after a certain period in terms of employment, the right to get on with your life and not to have your entire life seen through the lens of having been ill at a certain point with breast cancer. And then there's the right as I say, to be forgotten, to be remembered by the employer, of course. You want to be remembered by the employer, but to be forgotten from the point of view of when it comes to insurance and mortgages and so on. So the employer to remember, and then that it can be put into its right place, both in employment, of course, but also when it comes to looking for insurances, mortgages, and so on. And I think these are real issues that impact on real life day to day that we have to be very clear about. That we have to look at the entire span of one's life and the different issues that come up in relation to access to health, access to work, and then how the community actually views breast cancer. So those are my thoughts, my initial thoughts for this presentation today. I think it's a unique opportunity in the Parliament at present. With the Commission plan, with the intergroup on cancer, and so on, the Bleeding Cancer Plan. EPP is hosting and has organised this morning. Fiona, thank you for all the work you've done. We have a lot of work to do on an ongoing basis, but I think great progress has been made. But then there are GDP issues about sharing research, how the difference between research and clinical practice, getting the best from clinical practice, back to the researchers is another key issue, those relationships. And also, I think, making sure, and I've no doubt the Commissioner will work on this, that innovative medicines, new medicines, get as much support from Member States as the older medicines, and also new technology, and making sure that countries are using new technology as opposed to very old machines. A recent survey has shown that in many countries there's huge variation, particularly in the last number of years, in terms of the quality of the technology that's actually being used. So plenty of work to be getting on with, but I think great motivation in the Commission, both from the President of the Commission, from Stella, and indeed across the Parliament, across all the political parties. So I think it's a good time, but very important that we keep the pressure on and we keep highlighting the ongoing issues in order to make sure we have that better equality of access, diagnosis, treatment, and so on. Thank you very much, Kevin. I'll leave it at that.
Thanks, Frances, for that, and thanks for taking time out of your bank holiday Monday morning to speak to us today. So now we have about 7 minutes for questions or comments in this section, and for the MEPs in our audience, maybe if you want to jump in now, maybe identify yourself. But before we get to that, I'll get the ball rolling. And the MEPs there and the Commissioner indeed spoke about inequalities between member states, and I want to find out a bit more. I mean, if we look at survival rates, for instance, in countries like Sweden, they're 20% higher than in places like Slovakia. I know, Cindy, you said it's important not to point fingers, but I mean, how do you think, what's the first thing we can do to try and reduce this gap in inequality across the EU member states?
Let me first of all say that this is really shameful, and it should be a priority to close this gap. Someone who is diagnosed with breast cancer in Slovakia should have the same chances to survive as someone in Sweden. Actually, the things I said earlier are applicable here too. First of all, early detection and screening are essential. More patients can be saved by closing the two gaps in screening I mentioned, both socially and geographically. Secondly, access to care and medicines. We need to reduce the social gap inside member states, but also between member states. It's really not acceptable that citizens of the more wealthy states could have access to better care and medicines than in other states. The quality of care need to be improved and more harmonized throughout Europe, throughout the Union. And the most important tool of doing this is to pool and share all our expertise and knowledge between the member states. There should be better cooperation and communication between centers of excellence. For example, the European reference networks could play an important role in this one.
Thanks for that, Cindy. I think Maria Graça Calvallo would like to speak now. If you can unmute yourself. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good morning to Commissioner, all the invitees, colleagues, everyone attending this very interesting meeting, and I would like to thank the organizers for this meeting. I would like to stress the role of research, as Commissioner has said. It's very important for the scientific base, but not only, it's also very important to address the better treatment, better diagnostics, better way of living with cancer and after cancer. And the research suffers many of the points that have already been stressed here for the cancer in general. Fragmentation in the research, but also fragmentation of the data. We don't have enough cooperation on data at the member states level in general in research, but it's particularly problematic in the health research and in the cancer research. So we need to work more on increasing the critical mass and the cooperation of research in cancer all over Europe and in the exchange of data. And the mission is a starting point, is a very good starting point, the cancer mission, but we need to pursue and to do more on this field of the cooperation to advance science, because it's only if we have critical mass and work together that we can advance. It's very important for cancer that we advance more on the scientific field. Another interest point is the inequality in member states. It is proved that the inequality in research gives rise to inequality in healthcare. And you can see a parallel. The countries that invest more in research are also the ones investing more in healthcare, and the opposite. And we have a huge gap in inequality on health research in the member states, and that is something that we are also very worried, and we should look. We should not be only looking at the research that we do financed by the European Commission, but we should look at what is going on the member states, and this idea of putting strengthening the European research area, looking at the member states and linking what is being done at the European level and the member states level is very important. No fields, but special on health and special on cancer. So thank you very much, Commissioner Kyriakides, for the support that you also give to the health and the biomedical and the health research. We have a lot to do during the rest of our mandate, also linking the health and the research that is so important. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Maria, for those comments. We have a question from one of our panelists. I might ask Francis Fitzgerald to come in on this one. Sarah Carey asks, what is the role of drug approval in the EU in treating cancer? Can the process be improved and help increase access in member states? Francis.
Our commissioner might be the most expert on that particular one, actually. But of course, I mean, I've been involved in interesting discussions recently about, innovative treatments across the board. I mean, we have it here in Ireland, we have it in other countries. How do you get the innovative treatments? How do you find a space for them? And I think it may be that we need a different, I'm not sure whether the Commissioner would agree or not now, but we need to find a way of making sure that the innovative drugs and technologies get a pathway into the budgets of member states in a quick enough way to ensure that they get to the right women and men with breast cancer in a speedy and effective way. I've no doubt the process could become faster. There is a lot of dissatisfaction with it. I do know that, and a sense that if you're used to giving funding for particular drugs, just getting the newer drugs in can be quite difficult. And it may well be that we need new stakeholder groups around that. It's one of the suggestions that's on the table at the moment, that we would have a new stakeholder group looking at this issue in particular across the EU, working more effectively together. But I would very much like to hear what the Commissioner has to say about that, because I've no doubt it's an area she's been looking at.
Thanks, Frances. I wasn't sure if the Commissioner was still with us. I think she is. So briefly, Commissioner, because we're over time, just on that question of access to medicine.
No, I'm still here and listening very carefully. I'll be very brief. So much has been said that I feel that I would like to comment on. I can understand that this is impossible. But I would say that from the very beginning, what we need to do is build on partnerships across the board. This has been mentioned. Nobody can tackle and implement a Europe's leading cancer plan on their own. So this is why we need to have everyone on board, and it's part of my ongoing work, the continuous consultation with everyone, and especially the European Parliament. I think here is crucial. I want to say something on the right to be forgotten, because this is included in the Europe's leading cancer plan. It is very important. It's not so much the right to be forgotten, but it's the right to have social and other rights for anyone who's been through breast cancer. The right to insurance, the right to employment. This is what we need to safeguard. This is equality at every level. And metastatic cancer, metastatic breast cancer, women who really we need to look at their cases. We need to address their issues. It's totally different needs. And this is also going to be addressed in the European Cancer Plan. And coming to innovative medicines, I'll just say in 2 words, it's a huge issue. We're looking at it in the European Cancer Plan, but more than that, we have a new pharmaceutical strategy that is going to be coming out in November, and it is also going to be addressing this. And in the European Cancer Plan, we're looking also at, for example, pediatric cancers, which really have a huge issue with innovative medicine. So the European Cancer Plan is not a standalone plan that will solve everything on its own, but it will feed into the pharmaceutical strategy. And so one will support the other in terms of having access to care and innovative treatments as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner. We'll move straight on now to our second topic, and it's an issue that is sometimes forgotten about when it comes to cancer, and that is mental health and the daily struggle many people face daily, particularly during the COVID-19 pandemic. To set the scene, we have a short video from the Marie Keating Foundation, and right afterwards we'll hear from Helen Forrestal, Director of Nursing Services there. So we'll play that video now.
You know, women in pink and happy, and
you want to buy a pretty pink dress for your daughter.
It's not a colour that would appeal to me. Everyone's got their colour and their reasons for their colour.
I have absolutely no issue with pink. It's fantastic that it's a global colour. It's a global image.
Pink isn't synonymous with the cancer journey that I have taken and I'm currently on.
My cancer is a stronger colour than that. My cancer is purple. There was that, purple colour coming into my life about grieving for the life that I won't be living.
When I see cancer, I see white. When you have your mammogram, cancer shows up as white. Some people say it's like looking for a snowball in a snowstorm.
I would pick red because it screams fear, it's danger, you're afraid, you don't know what's going to happen over the next 12 to 18 months. The fear associated with the colour red never leaves you, and it will never leave me. It's embedded in me now because the fear of reoccurrence.
It's that sea blue. It's that feeling of sometimes like you're drowning, and sometimes that you're free as the blue sea itself. It's like something it's there and it just goes on forever and ever.
In the Repeating Foundation, we are with patients every step of the way, and we've talked about that. Cindy, you brought it to the fore there as well. You know, it's not just about early detection, it's early detection and screening. One of our philosophies is to make cancer less frightening by enlightening. So making sure that people are not afraid to come forward and to be screened. We work very much in marginalised communities also, trying to, you know, make it less frightening so that people do come forward. And also survivorship is a huge part of the work we do, and we'll learn a little bit more about that in this session. So our breast cancer awareness campaign this year has been Breast Cancer Isn't Just Pink. It's been very much part of patient-centric care. So we've had patient involvement within this, and it came from a campaign we ran last year around Glam Up Your Bra. And we discovered, and rightly so, that breast cancer isn't just pink for everybody. It's not pink and fluffy, but we do acknowledge and we accept also that it is a global symbolic, colour for breast cancer. And that is fantastic because we all need to acknowledge and be in the same space. But breast cancer, this year we've discovered, is a kaleidoscope of colours and emotions are often affected. And Kevin mentioned about mental health in all of this. And this is where we're coming from. You know, it's very emotional for people. It's not just pink. So the McKeating Foundation launched a new campaign to mark breast cancer awareness this month, and through a focus group of women. And you saw those women in the video, but you also saw the uniqueness of their colour and why they might have chose that colour, even from a negative or a positive perspective. It had a dual kind of understanding and appreciation. We do appreciate pink. However, we know that many patients experience darker moments and have difficulties dealing with the stark reality of the cancer that they've been diagnosed with. And they may feel very alienated by this overwhelming pink positiveness and happy feeling that is portrayed. So we've taken that a step further. And I suppose really what we're looking for today is the reality and the honesty and the depth of how people feel. We have brought breast cancer patients together with localized breast cancer, but also with metastatic breast cancer. So I'm going to introduce Sarah, and we heard a little bit about Sarah, but just bear with me a minute. Sarah is a journalist, and Sarah wrote an article some while back on Let's Declare War on cancer, on the cancer battle actually. So we're looking at that specifically, but the colour of cancer is also, a discussion and a viewpoint. But terminology in cancer is also that. So I'm going to bring Sarah on board, Sarah, and then Sarah is going to actually manage this panel discussion. Susan O'Flanagan is also a lead clinical psychologist in Vincent's Hospital. And one of the things that very, comes forward with Susan is she has many conversations with patients and appreciates the unique set of challenges that patients feel and are living with, and the importance of gatherings like today to actually bring people together. We have Roisin Dunn, and Roisin is an ambassador for the McKeating Foundation. Roisin was initially diagnosed in 2012 and stopped in her tracks with a diagnosis of stage 2 breast cancer. She had chemotherapy, bilateral mastectomy, radiotherapy, and 2 bouts of sepsis that actually put Roisin into a space with post-traumatic stress disorder and acute anxiety. And Roisin will talk a little bit about this. Roisin has been very much a part of the McKeating family for some time now. We talked about survivorship earlier. Roisin was a big part of our 6-week Survive and Thrive programme and came out the other side transformed in a different way. But unfortunately for Roisin in 2018, she was re-diagnosed with metastatic breast cancer. But she's here to tell her story. She's living with a very good palliative care support team and is very positive in how she approaches her life and living her best life. We also have Mairead O'Sullivan, and Mairead is a member of Europa Donna Ireland. And Mairead is a mother of 3 teenagers. She's a proud Kerry woman, and that might mean something to us in Ireland, but it's the other side of the country, but also lives in beautiful West Cork. And Mairead really just wants to live her best life and see the lives of her 3 teenage boys unfold and be able to share that life with them for as long as she can. And we also have Barbara. So Barbara is from Europa Donna, and Barbara is with us because she felt really strongly about being part of Europa Donna and has a strong family history of breast cancer, which affected her and her family in her life. So Barbara was diagnosed in 2016. So I'd really like to bring Sarah to the panel now, Sarah and Susan to start with. Sarah, are you able to come forward there? Okay,
I'm not sure if Sarah can hear us, Helen. Maybe we can skip on to the next person if they're there.
So Susan, if Susan maybe could come forward. Susan, can you hear me?
Yeah, can I be heard?
You can, we can hear you. Thanks, Susan.
Perfect. Okay. Good morning, everybody. I'm really thrilled to be and honoured to be part of this webinar today. I think Sarah, who was about to speak before me, as Helen said, wrote an article about this battle language and this idea of positivity that's really prevalent within cancer culture. And I suppose Sarah wrote this from the point of view of the media, from the outside in kind of view. And from my work as a clinical psychologist in an acute hospital setting in St Vincent's Hospital in Dublin, I have the privilege of hearing stories, of hearing patients' experiences, and hearing what this type of language and this type of positivity, the impact that this can have on people. So I suppose really just to speak to that a little bit today. I know that probably within the audience we have people with of all different ages, with different types of cancer, and at all different stages, from the point of diagnosis, through treatment, into survivorship, and potentially people at end of life as well. And what we know, and a couple of important points that I wanted to get through today from my work, is that there, and Cindy pointed to this earlier, is the psychosocial impacts and effects that breast cancer can have on men and women. And we know that all of the physical ramifications of disease, but we also know that there's huge psychological, emotional, and social implications as well. And that these are really common and they're really understandable and really normal. And what we know is that people experience a range of difficulties, from isolation, loneliness, from low mood to anxiety, from grief and loss of identity, loss of role, loss of libido, loss of typical appearance and appearance changes. But we also know that there's huge existential issues that come with this territory as well. And some of these psychological implications of cancer are really poorly understood. And as well as that, there's a lot of social constraints around it. So some things it's okay to talk about, and some things are a little bit more taboo. So what we know is that the landscape of breast cancer is hugely, hugely individual. And even though it's a very individual landscape, what we know is that within cancer culture, there's often this idea of a one-size-fits-all. We have a lot of battle language. We have a lot of kind of stay positive. And I imagine if we were all here in a room together today, and I asked people if they had ever heard these terms, fighting, battling, surviving, winning, losing, positivity, that many people within the audience would have their hand raised. And what we know is that cancer battle language is helpful for some, but not for all. So the experience of cancer is really individual, but also how people cope is really individual. And within cancer culture, there can be a huge pressure on people to maintain these kind of ideas of being positive and this kind of battle language or attitude. And what I would say is that if this is helpful for you and this is how you relate to your own experience, then continue to do so, and that's probably helpful for you. However, what I find in my work with people is that there's a huge number of people for whom this language and this type of attitude is very unhelpful and can increase distress. So what are some of the problems with this kind of battle language? Well, often we feel that many people don't feel that they fit with this kind of mode or way of coping with cancer. They have this idea that they should have a warrior-like fighting stance, but actually when they come into the room to meet with me, it's very different to how they truly feel. They tell me things like, I don't feel brave, I don't feel able to fight, I feel very vulnerable. And so this can lead to very much of a disconnect and can lead to increased feelings of shame and guilt, negative judgment about how someone's coping with their cancer, reduced communication with families, and a feeling of disconnect. So really one of the things to remember is that your attitude to life in general is probably going to be how you approach your cancer as well. And so if there's a mismatch and you feel that you don't generally see yourself as a positive person or a glass half full, but you feel a pressure to have that type of mentality when you're going through your treatment, this can create quite a gap and can leave people feeling more vulnerable, more distressed, and more alone. Another thing is this idea of the positive and this pressure on people to be positive through their treatment. We know that feeling scared, feeling upset, feeling angry, feeling anxious are really normal and acceptable reactions when someone has a diagnosis and is going through treatment. And we even know that there's predictable times where these tend to become more apparent. So at the time of diagnosis, when treatment starts, at the end of treatment, or when people are going through scans. And we also know that we can be taken kind of by surprise as well. So at anniversaries, celebrations and things like that, we can also experience really, really high levels of distress as well. And what can happen very often is this idea of this positive thinking can leave people normal emotional reactions feeling very invalidated. And really what it can do is it can act as a bit of a straitjacket to emotions. It can inhibit people getting help and it can lead to feelings of disconnection. And many researchers and many psychologists working in clinical practice advocate for this idea of allowing people to have a full range of emotions and that we shouldn't just be tied to this idea of the positive or this kind of battle language or mentality. And what we know actually from consistent scientific research evidence is that there is no evidence to suggest that having a battle attitude or being positive actually changes cancer outcomes. Now, what we do know is that our attitude can be helpful for our quality of life and for our well-being. But often people feel that they have to have this positive attitude and feel disconnected. So actually what we advocate for is more of a kind of clear thinking, irrational thinking, somewhere in between. If positive thinking and this battle attitude is not actually helpful for you. What it can do is this idea of the straitjacket of emotions. But our emotions are really important and feeling the full range of emotions is really important. When we're going through treatments and when we're going through all different scans and appointments and all that goes with it, our emotions can be really scary and they can be really overwhelming. And often people can feel a pressure to kind of keep positive, stay positive during this time. But again, we're leading to this sense of disconnection if we're forced into doing this. And also it can minimize our emotions. It can push us away from sadness, from fear, from anxiety, really important emotions that need to be felt and that often need to be acknowledged. But what we know is this kind of pushing them away, this minimization, this not trying to look at things that are already there. Often what they do is they make emotions persist. So often what we resist persists. So what we would suggest instead is maybe for people who don't find this language helpful, who don't find this battle attitude, this positive thinking helpful for them, that maybe they would be able to welcome and deal with emotions in a different way. What we know is that by naming our emotional experience, by accepting and tolerating emotions, by practicing a compassionate and a caring attitude to ourselves, and by seeking support from the likes of community-based services and professional support services, actually we can be much more authentic and honest and cope in a way that really fits for us when we're going through our cancer experience. So really from this conversation today, it's just about highlighting that this battle language, this tyranny of the positive, as many researchers write about, that exists within cancer culture, that many people do find that helpful. And if it's helpful for you, I would say continue to use it. However, really bringing attention to the fact that it is unhelpful for a large majority of people. And for those people, really important to hear that message, that emotions are welcome, and an authentic experience is welcome, and that if you don't feel that works for you, then that's okay, and maybe think about alternatives that could be supportive to you.
Thank you so much, Susan. Susan, I think we've lost Sarah.
Well, I think, can you hear me, Helen?
Oh yes, you're back in, right, Sarah?
So now, hi everybody, sorry I missed that today. I did catch a lot of what Susan said, and it covered plenty of the territory that I was going to mention, so I won't lay everybody too long before they hear everybody else. There was just one point that I wanted to make, and that's so obviously we've been talking about the usefulness of the war metaphors and the battle language, but one of the things I wanted to particularly mention was the issue of positivity. And obviously a huge amount of the work that organisations like Europa Donna and the Marie Keating Foundation do is, that patients can live well, and being positive is obviously absolutely essential to help you get up every day and get on with your life. But there's one part of that concerns me, and that's where we start to link positive feelings with treatment, that somehow being positive will actually help to cure you. And I think that can be unhelpful if people get into that way of thinking, particularly when everybody around them urges them to be positive, as if somehow being positive, will help actually fight the cancer. And I want to recommend everybody have a look at the work of the American journalist Barbara Ehrenreich, who wrote a super book on this called Smile or Die, which is very much an American philosophy as well. That you simply imagine, a fantastic outcome, then you can actually make it happen. And in her book, she quoted one particular woman who wrote to the mind-body medical guru Deepak Chopra. And she wrote, even though I follow the treatments, have come a long way in unburdening myself of toxic feelings, have forgiven everyone, changed my lifestyle to include meditation, prayer, proper diet, exercise and supplements, the cancer keeps coming back. Am I missing a lesson here that it keeps reoccurring? I am positive I'm going to beat it, yet it does get harder with each diagnosis to keep a positive attitude. And I think that's something that we should maybe try to work to lift the burden from cancer patients around that. It's one thing to try and live each day well, and another to believe that if you're scared, if you're angry, if you have all these negative feelings, that's not going to impact on your prognosis. And it is okay to have those feelings, and it's okay to admit to them. So I will leave it there for the minute, and we can come back in and chat a little bit more about that with Ray, Barbara and Roisin.
Yeah, so we might bring Roisin, Marie and Barbara in if we can there, because these are the people who are living with cancer, with breast cancer and metastatic breast cancer, and they know how it feels. And they're going to tell us, and hopefully if we can get them in. Roisin, I wonder if we could bring Roisin in.
Yeah, hi everybody. And
hi,
Roisin. Yes, I've metastatic breast cancer. I've been dealing with cancer for almost 9 years now, and at the moment it's metastatic. But I've certainly found that the mental issues of cancer are harder almost than the treatment for cancer itself. There's a huge onus on me. People keep telling me to fight, and are you eating properly? Are you doing all the right things? It's not my fault I've gotten the cancer, and I can't cure my cancer. So why is it probably the only illness I know of where there's a certain amount of onus on me, according to other people, to deal with it and to cure it and to make myself better? Have you tried eating whatever, drinking grasses or eating certain foods because that will help your cancer? Don't eat this because that's feeding your cancer. Don't do this. Are you getting enough rest? Are you continuing to battle? Are you staying strong? None of those things are going to help my cancer to be cured, but people certainly make you feel that there is an element of your own durability, if you like. And I certainly have to live with an awful lot of guilt on top of the treatment and the other things that I go through.
And Roisin, would you be able to liken that experience? I mean, it's exhausting even listening to how you feel about all of that. But can you liken that experience to someone else who might have been sick in your life or in your family?
My dad had a triple bypass about 13 years ago, 3 or 4 years before I was diagnosed with cancer. I have never heard anybody tell him to go and drink certain drinks, or are you eating properly, or how are you battling? Are you staying strong? People come to him and say, now make sure you're resting and you're working, things will improve and take it easy. But they don't tell him to battle or to continue to fight. And his, it's no different. He had a major illness as well, but the onus is not on him. The onus is on the people around him and his medical team to help him. Whereas I feel with cancer, a lot of the time the onus is put on us to stay strong and battle. And then you hear, somebody has lost the battle. They haven't lost the battle. Nobody is going to want to lose the battle. But it's not us. There shouldn't be the guilt factor as opposed to somebody with a stroke or with a heart disease or anything like that.
Yeah, sure. Mairead, would I be able to bring you in here? I know we're running out of time, so I'd like to bring Mairead and Barbara in if we can, just to see how Mairead and Barbara feel and maybe what experience they've had in the battle, declaring the war, as you say, Sarah, on the cancer battle.
Yeah, and of course, I'm the same as Roisin, the amount of people that suggest the various things. I'm living with cancer 13 years and with metastatic cancer that's 3. And I put it down on what I had said 13 years ago. My children were from 3 to 7. I just wanted to see them growing up for as long as possible, and that has been my wish. And I thought I keep the focus on that. And sometimes people say to me, you're so positive, how do you do it? And I just turn it, the way I look at this, we only all have to live. We live in the moment. We all sit into our car and we go on a journey, and we always assume we get out of it. And some people aren't that fortunate. So I thought that's the way I treat it, is I'm doing my best. I want to be there to see the small children are now teenagers, and one of them is after moving up to teenagers, and that's great. And I just want to see that story for as long as possible. And yes, but I want to live well in the meantime. That's how I do it.
Okay, without all the challenges of what people might say to you.
And it's not that I didn't fight or that I gave up the fight. We're all doing our best. And like Roisin said, if we had any other illness, none of those work to be used for us.
Sure. Okay, thanks, Mairead. Barbara, are you able to come in?
Yes, I'm here.
Hi, Barbara.
Hi.
How are you in all of this conversation, and how does this, like, declaring the battle on the cancer war, feel to you?
Well, I mean, I think I came in from a little different perspective, I think, than Mairead and Roisin, in the sense that I kind of lived my whole life wondering, when it was going to happen, not if, because of my family history. So for me, when I was diagnosed, it was like, okay, now I can get on with it. I can do what I need to do to get on. And my youngest was 4 when I was diagnosed, so the same as Mairead. I wanted to do anything that I needed to do to be able to see him grow up. And so I kind of pushed headstrong, along, in it. I also, I think, partially working for Yokozuna and being involved in it, we talk in our prevention programs as well, that, you have to be careful also how you phrase things, because women do feel guilty because they think, I did everything I needed to do. I ate properly. I don't smoke. I don't drink, but they still, you can still be diagnosed with cancer even if, you take all of the precautions. So I kind of came from it, as I said, from a different aspect. And also, like Mairead, somebody, metastatic breast cancer patient at one of our first meetings said, you have to live your dash. And I really love that phrase, because, you have to live every moment, and you learn to really
to live in the moment, and you don't sweat some of the small stuff that, maybe before, would weigh heavily on you. You kind of learn to let go of more things and really focus on, what you want to do, what you want to get out of life. But as I say, everybody takes it differently. I mean, everybody handles it, even, as Susan was saying that, everybody has a different way of handling it, and you can't just have one standard approach. And I think people have to, they have to respect how somebody handles it and how they want to handle, their diagnosis and their treatment.
So you, yeah. Sarah, do you want to come back in there?
Yeah, just one thing in that, when we've been having this conversation, we've been assuming that this language is used by kind of well-meaning friends who are trying to say something encouraging, but I don't know if we had this conversation last week at the Marie Keating Foundation discussion. A lot of people referenced that health professionals use this language too. And one lady said that the doctor said, well, we're in a war and we're in this together and we're fighting together. And she said, I didn't choose this war. I don't want to fight this war. So it's actually a conversation we need to spread amongst health professionals and not just the well-meaning friends. I think that's important.
Yeah. And Susan, maybe one final word from yourself as we're out of time, but Susan, as a healthcare professional yourself, what would your word of advice be to healthcare professionals? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm really, really grateful for the three ladies there for sharing. And I think even with a sample of three, we see that people have really different experiences and people have really different needs. And I think that's exactly the message for healthcare professionals, that kind of taking the pulse of the person that's in room with you, and maybe taking that opportunity to ask that question, what works for you? Because for some people, that idea of that fight and that battle and staying positive will be really effective and helpful, and they'll want their healthcare professional to be right there with them. And for others, it will leave them feeling disconnected and feeling that sense that the ladies have talked about, that guilt and shame of not doing things right. So I would suggest that one size fits all, taking that approach from a healthcare professional point of view as well, and then led by the experts, which are the patients in the room.
Absolutely, I totally agree. And I think we'll sign off maybe from the conversation by thanking Marie, Barbara and Roisin for their, very valuable, human, honest input, and live that dash. And I suppose more important than ever in COVID and in cancer care is, please stay connected. We're in this together and we will look after each other. And they're my final words. So, Kevin, I think you're going to come back in. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Helen. I don't think I can add much more to that. We really appreciate everyone's time this morning, or the Commissioner, our co-hosts and panellists, and we'll be keeping a close eye on the work of the European Commission and the European Parliament over the coming weeks, months and years ahead. Hopefully see a better outcome for everyone affected by cancer. Before you go, make sure to follow our EU Can Beat Cancer pages. We're on Facebook and Instagram, #EU Can Beat Cancer on Twitter. So that's it from us. Thank you for taking part and have a very good morning.
No, there's nothing pink about it at all.
It's light and it's soft.
Women in pink and happy, and
you want to buy a pretty pink dress for your daughter.
It's not a colour that would appeal to me.
Everyone's got their colour and their reasons for their colour.
I have absolutely no issue with pink. It's fantastic that it's a global colour. It's a global image.
Pink isn't synonymous with the cancer journey that I have taken and I'm currently on.
My cancer is a stronger colour than that. My cancer is purple. There was that, purple colour coming into my life about grieving for the life that I won't be living.
When I see cancer, I see white. When you have your mammogram, cancer shows up as white. Some people say it's like looking for a snowball in a snowstorm.
I would pick red because it screams fear, it's danger, you're afraid, you don't know what's going to happen over the next 12 to 18 months. the fear associated with the colour red never leaves you, and it will never leave me. It's embedded in me now because the fear of reoccurrence.
It's that sea blue. It's that feeling of sometimes like you're drowning, and sometimes that you're free as the blue sea itself. It's like something it's there and it just goes on forever and ever. And unfortunately for me, my cancer isn't curable. It's a forever.
I don't categorise it as whether I'm a better person or a worse person. I'm a different person. I'm different in lots of ways.
There'll always be a level of fear. I mean, I still have to take that tablet every day, my bedside locker. And so every time I open the locker to take that every morning, it's just a reminder.
I have accepted I have cancer, and the type of cancer I have will always live with me. So in being able to accept it, it helps me to live the rest of my journey, whatever that will be.